Okay, today we're going to be doing lesson 7-ish from module 1, where we're going to be rounding numbers on a vertical number line. For today's math lesson, you do not need your homework book. What you do need is some scratch paper or a whiteboard or something where you can be doing the math problems with me, because the problems that we're going to do today are not in our books. They are going to help us get ready for lesson 7 in class tomorrow by reviewing vertical number lines, because in previous years you guys have rounded using vertical number lines before. So I just want to review how to work through those problems when we're thinking about whole numbers. Vertical number lines, remember, are number lines that go up and down, and we're going to use those to help us with our rounding as we look through the next couple problems. So be working with me with these problems on some scratch paper. So the first problem we're going to do is 548, and we want to round it to the nearest tens place. So I'm going to start by drawing my number line. And if I'm thinking about the tens place of my 548, I can identify that 4 as being in the tens place. I have 8 ones, 4 tens, and 5 hundreds. If you need to write it in your place value chart, you can do that, but you'll see that the 4 is in the tens place. So what I need to do to my number line is find a bottom endpoint and a top endpoint, and that's what I'm going to be rounding in between. My bottom endpoint is going to be how many tens I currently have in my number. So if I look at my 548, I underlined the 4 because that's the place value I'm rounding to. So that means there's at least 4 tens. We have to think about this whole number, though, because I don't just have 4 tens. I have the 500 worth of tens as well. So I actually have 540 on the bottom, and that equals my total of 54 tens, because I have 4 tens in the tens place, and I have 50 tens in the hundreds place. So I end up with 54 tens. But I get 540. That's how many current tens I have. Now for my top end point, I want to find out what is one more 10. So 540 plus 10 is going to be 550. So that means I'm going to be trying to figure out if I should round 548 to 540 or 550. The way that I can do that is by finding the midpoint. So what's the number that's halfway in between 540 and 550? Well, I know my midpoints are always between 2 zeros. There's always going to be a 5, because 5 is halfway between 10. So since 5 is halfway between 10, I know that 545 is going to be halfway between 540 and 550. So I have my bottom endpoint, my top endpoint, and my midpoint. And now that I have all of that set up, I can figure out this specific problem. So my whole number is 548. Where on my number line is 548 going to go? Is it going to be below 545? Or is it going to be above 545? 548, 545, 48 is bigger than 45, so it's going to go above. Because my number falls above the midpoint, that means I'm going to round up. So my answer, my number rounded to the nearest tens place, is 550. Let's keep practicing. 548, now rounded to the nearest hundreds place, not hundredths place. I'm used to decimals. Hundreds place. So let's draw our number line. Again, we need to find our bottom endpoint and our top endpoint. So the place value we are rounding to is the hundreds place. So I always underline the place value I'm rounding to, so I can pay special attention to that digit. And in this case, it's 5. It's the 500s. So my bottom number is going to be 500. what tends to happen is that the number that we underline stays the same. So it's a 5 and a 5, you'll see, and the rest of the number turns to zeros because I have 5 hundreds in 500. Now, to find my top midpoint, I'm going to add 100 more. So because I'm adding 100 because I'm rounding to the hundreds place. So 500 plus 100 will be 600. So I know that rounding 548 to the nearest hundreds will either give me 500 or 600, and I need to figure out what the answer is. It will be one of those two. What will help me is when I find my midpoint. So what is the number that's halfway between 500 and 600? Well, if I'm counting halfway between anything, it's going to be that 5. So halfway between 500 and 600 is going to be, 550. 50 is half of 100. So with 550 as my midpoint, I can look at my whole number of 548 and see if it's going to go below or above. 548 is less than 550. Pretty close, though. So it's going to be right underneath, but it's under, so I'm going to round down. So my answer is 500. 548, rounded to the nearest hundreds place, is 500. Okay. 6,300, rounded to the nearest thousands. Number line it up. Finding an bottom end point and a top end point. I'm rounding to the nearest thousands place, so I'm going to underline my thousands, which is the 6. So when I think about how many thousands are in 6,300, I know that there are 6,000 of them. One more 1,000 than 6,000 is 7,000. So when I round it to the nearest thousands place, I'm either rounding it to 6,000 or 7,000. To help us, we'll find our midpoint. Halfway between 6,000 and 7,000 is going to be 6,500. And then all I have to do is figure out where my number is going to fall. 6,300, is it less than 6,500 or greater than 6,500? 300 is less than 500, so it's going to go less than. Just like the last one, if it's less than my midpoint, that means I'm going to round down. So my answer is that bottom number. I always like to circle that bottom number so I know that that is my final answer, and it's showing me in my work that that's my answer. General rule that we're always going to follow is if your number is less than your midpoint, you round down. And if it's greater than your midpoint, you round up. Now remember, if it is exactly equal to your midpoint. So if I was trying to round 6,500 to the nearest thousands, it would fall directly here on my midpoint. If it falls on the midpoint, you round up. So midpoint or higher, you go up. Less than the midpoint, you go down. Last one is a practice. 4,105, rounded to the nearest hundreds place. So hundreds is the 1. Let's set up our number line. Bottom end point. So I'm thinking about how many hundreds are in 4,100. So it's 4. I just said it. How many hundreds are in 4,105? It's 4,100. I'm going to rewrite that because that looks like a 6. What's one more 100? Would be 4,200. Because I'm rounding to the hundreds, that's why I add the extra 100 to find my top end point. And then my last setup is to find that midpoint. Halfway between 4,100 and 4,200 is going to be 4,150. So now looking at my number, 4,105, where is it going to fall on this number line? It's definitely less than halfway. It's really close to the bottom, actually. because 105 is less than 150. So again, I'm going to round down. So my final answer is 4,100. 4,105, round to the smallest hundreds, or round to the hundreds place, is 4,100. So when we're rounding on number lines, review, we set up our vertical number line, we underline the place number that we're thinking of in our original number. That helps us figure out and set up our number line correctly. We figure out our bottom end point and our top end point. Between those two endpoints falls our midpoint, and then we figure out where does our number fall within that number line. And by figuring that out, it'll tell us in which direction to round our number. So that is lesson 7-ish, rounding numbers on a vertical number line. Go ahead at this point and fill out the rest of your review Google form.